Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by Wendy's. Holy crap. We just watched Georgia escape Kentucky 13-12.
You know, it's been a long Saturday when you got two men's voices cracking at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. So I haven't dropped any foul language on this show yet, Andy, but are we going to just start this show off? There's so much to do, but can we just start off with that punt?
We go for it. Go.
Unconscionable. It's a big word for me.
Please
look it up. Help me. I had to check the spelling. Help this make sense to me.
Okay.
You're coming off Kentucky, that is, a week where you just laid down against South Carolina. It was a complete embarrassment of a loss.
Correct.
We're talking all week about how we don't even think that you're going to be able to do anything against Georgia. You're down by 1 in the game's final minutes in plus territory, about 10 or 15 yards away from a game-winning field goal attempt, facing a 4th and 8.
4th and 13.
It was 13 after the false start that they wouldn't have had if they would have lined up to go for it.
Okay.
It was 4th and 8.
All right.
We're not going to make this better for him. We're going to make it worse.
Okay.
What on earth are we doing? Explain it to me. He punted. Explain it to me in plain English how a human being that's in charge of an SEC football team that could have the best, biggest win of his career could punt in that situation. I think, without exaggeration, that was the worst fucking punt I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's inexcusable. You're playing with house money. Nobody expects you to win. There is not a single explanation from a single human being on the face of this planet that can explain to me and rationalize that decision. That was, again, unconscionable.
He went to Iowa. Mark Stoops went to Iowa. I mean, is that explanation enough for you?
Listen, I get it. Georgia wasn't moving the football. There were a few minutes left. You had some timeouts. You have the 2-minute warning. You have the 2-minute warning still. I understand how you could talk yourself into punting in that situation, but you're going to have to get a stop anyway. Why does it matter if it's at midfield or if it's at whatever? Just go for the game. Like, there is an epidemic of coaches coaching afraid in this sport.
Well, this is the sort of thing, like, this is why Texas A&M, their people revolted when they were planning to hire Mark Stoops. When they found out that Ross Bjork, who was then the AD at A&M, was going to hire Mark Stoops, they revolted, and it was because of stuff like this.
It just doesn't. You cannot look. How do you look your team in the eye?
This would have been win number 3 for Mark Stoops against an SEC team that will finish above 500 in SEC play. 3. It would have been 3. It's still 2 now.
I mean, it would have been in college football. It's the only place that this could happen, where people are Googling your buyout one week and then you have the biggest win of your career the next week. I don't know how you look your team in the eye. I had to ask you before the show if I was allowed to use curse words. I'm going to use one more. That was just chicken shit. Like, honestly, there's no other way to put it. It was unbelievably bad. And I feel bad for his team.
Yes.
Because they fought their asses off the entire game. They were in a position to win there, and there is no excuse whatsoever. I feel like the coach took it away from his team in that game, because I think they would have gotten it. I think they had a chance to get it. They were running it well.
They might have gotten it.
They might not have gotten it.
Even if they hadn't gotten it, they would have had a better chance than they had punting.
I mean, it's just, what do you do to your sideline? Even if you go for it and don't get it, don't you want to go down believing in your team to get it done? You sending your defense
he's
out there.
He's going to say he believed in his defense. I'm going to tell you that right now. He hasn't gone to the podium yet, but he's going to say that he believed in his defense. That said, the defense had actually started to show cracks at that point, where,
I mean, Georgia wears you down. That's what they are. That's who they are. They're machines. Like, you don't want to give the machine the ball. And what happened? Didn't they just pop like a 35-yard pass, like one or two plays right after it? Like, what happened?
Georgia wasn't afraid. And I see all of you in the chat firing Mike Bobo tonight. I get it, but they were okay. Like, they won their clunker. You don't have to melt down yet. They play Alabama in 2 weeks. We saw Alabama today in Madison. We saw them live and in person. I got to tell you, the Georgia team we saw against Kentucky ain't beating Alabama.
Yeah, okay, so we'll move on from that. I'm happy that we started off hot. Like I do
Well,
think
no, we're not moving on from that. You can move on from the punt decision. But
let's
I have
move
a question.
on to Georgia.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Ari, who just finished writing up your top 10.
Yeah.
Where you got the Bulldogs?
2.
Were they 1 before?
They were 1 before.
Okay, I've had them at 2 in bracketology.
Yeah.
Because I think Ohio State has a better chance of running the table.
Yep.
Than Georgia does, but that has more to do with the projection.
Help me out with this. So I'm doing a top 10 and a bubble watch, which is basically a bracketology. Do you think that? Well, it's a more interesting way of looking at it, and it's different.
Oh, yours is more interesting than mine. I see.
No, you're just interesting because your fingers make magic, but mine need a little help, so they give me the interesting assignment. Andy, help me think this through real quick. So, should my bubble watch mirror my current rankings? Because they don't.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the current rankings can be here's where it is right now, and the bubble watch is
where I think it's going to be.
Here's where the projection winds up.
Because Ohio State's my number 1 in bubble watch, because I think they're going to be the number 1 seed when it all shakes out at the end of the year. But I just don't know what you're supposed to do with that. What are you supposed to do with that with Georgia?
I mean, you can drop them. If they beat Alabama, put them back.
Well, here's the question. You want to know who's number 1?
We do these every week. Yeah.
Texas is number 1.
Right. Okay.
So I think that it's fair to question. And I here's what I'm actually going to say. When we sat in your living room night 1, when we were back together at On 3 in your office, I brought up, does this Georgia team have enough firepower to be the Darth Vader that on the field this year that people thought they were going to be? And I questioned that. People got upset. I think I leave tonight's win over Kentucky questioning whether or not I believe this team is going to be an unbeaten team at the end of the year. In fact, I might even go as far as to say that I think Texas is the best team in the SEC.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think there were a lot of people thinking Georgia was going to finish unbeaten at the end of the year. They play Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss on the road. Like, who thought they were going 12-0?
Let's even rephrase it then. Georgia came into the year and they got a lot of number 1 votes from a lot of people, just assuming that they were going to be the Georgia that they've been the last 3 years. They are a very good football team. They're not going to lose very many games. I don't think they're the best team in the SEC right now.
They might not be.
Yeah.
Look, we saw Alabama today. Like, they're really good. We saw Texas last week in person.
It's going to be a hell of a game. I think Texas is the best team in the SEC. And we're going to get to Archmania here in a minute.
We are going to get to Archmania, but I was curious where you were putting Georgia. And look, moving them down from number 1, there's no shame in that. Like, they play more games. They have plenty of chances to prove they deserve to be number 1.
Yeah, and trust me, guess who will be right back at number 1 in 2 weeks if they beat Alabama?
Oh, yeah. So you go to Tuscaloosa and you win that game? Absolutely.
Especially given it's on the road. Alabama's playing really well. We saw them play in person. I do think, though, that it's just a rational thought to question the bulletproof team. And in my opinion, they as good as lost that game, and they could have lost had Kentucky's coach been a little braver.
Yeah, it would be. What an upset that would have been. They showed the clips from when Kentucky beat LSU in 2007, and I think it actually could have been a very similar situation. Like, Kentucky beat the eventual national champion that year. LSU ended up losing 2 games in the regular season and still won the BCS title. But that's what that could have been. And what a job by the Kentucky players. And, well, Mark Stoops, I'll give him his flowers on this one, to get those people up off the mat.
Yeah.
Because that was as bad as you've seen a team look against South Carolina. And they played as well as they could have possibly played tonight against Georgia.
Yeah, I thought that there was a legitimate chance that this Kentucky team would just lie down. I mean, after a week that you had 7 days ago to come in and host what we thought was the best team in college football, or one of the 3 best, and play them not only really well, but to the end. I really do say with a straight face that I think their coach took it from them tonight.
I don't think he took it from him. He robbed them of the chance to win it. That's what it was.
However you want to phrase it, I'm disgusted.
I get it. I get it.
I'm like, and I'm like the purveyor of the cowardly punt. Like that's my shtick.
Yeah.
So like I'm very on alert.
Yeah, you were ready for that, and you were simmering, And is he going to punt this? Like we knew
I legitimately
the
don't think
volcano was going to erupt.
if I were a college coach, I would ever punt from plus territory unless it was more than 4th and 11 or something.
Yeah.
Like I just like field position in this game, in this modern game of college football is not what it used to be.
Yards are cheap, points are precious. That's the rule. All right, we got to talk Archmania next. If you're wondering why we're not screaming about Florida and Billy Napier, we actually already did cover that in a video earlier tonight. You can take a look at that later. We will talk about it later in the show as well. But if you are just all you want to do is yell at Billy Napier, there's a video for that.
Yeah.
It's on the On3 Sports YouTube page already. I've also got a column up about the Florida situation. But when we come back, we're going to talk Archmania. But first, our friends at Wendy's, well, we tried all the Saucy Nuggs. I'm telling you, it was glorious. Ari, your official welcome to On3. We are presented by Wendy's, the Saucy Nuggs. That's our specialty item. We have every flavor of Saucy Nug.
Mm-hmm.
You've been training for this your entire life.
You know, I was telling everybody before this, but my dad looked at me in the eyes when I was a kid and he said, son, you can be anything you want to be. You just got to put your mind to it and work hard. And I said, I want to eat Wendy's on camera. So I made it. Here I am.
So I'm going to just get started.
Okay, why don't you
I'm going
get
to grab some
started?
garlic parm.
So, okay.
I like the garlic parm is a very like full, savory. The other, like the honey barbecue's got your sweet. Like this is your ultimate savory here. Buttery and savory.
Nothing better than washing it down with a crisp zero, too. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. A little Coke Zero action. No, that's the spicy buffalo. That's tremendous. I think that's kind of the perfect. That might be my favorite.
This is the Parmesan garlic, and this one I haven't tried yet. Which one
It's
was
a
this
little
one?
bit hotter. Parmesan garlic.
Oh, this is spicy Parmesan
Yeah,
garlic. Okay.
It's pretty damn good. See, that's.
I keep changing my favorite. I think that's the point of this exercise, right?
Yes.
That's my favorite one. I could put down 32 ounces of Coke Zero and be like,
It will not.
where's the next 32 ounces of Coke Zero?
Well, and
Yeah.
hey, free refills in the restaurant. So, Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs. Take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare you. It's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug. Have never nugged before. All right. Those were some delicious nugs.
Yeah, I never thought in a million years I would have another grown man wipe barbecue sauce on my face, but here we are.
But you knew what would happen when we got to this show. Now, something we did talk about going into this season. I remember writing it in a column and everybody getting mad at me over it. And I said, listen, this has happened each of the past 2 years. I'm not wishing any ill on anyone, but there is a chance that Quinn Ewers might get hurt and Arch Manning might have to go in for Texas. And sure enough, against UTSA, Quinn Ewers got hurt and Arch Manning had to go in for Texas.
Yeah, and it's not wishing. I think it's just in this
It's
world
happened.
of college football, there are people that are more prone to becoming injured than others. And it's okay to point out that it has happened quite a bit. And, you know, thankfully, I think that the Quinn Ewers injury that he suffered, a ab strain or abdominal strain, doesn't seem to be overly serious because I went to medical school. And they play UL Monroe next week, I think. So they have a week to play around. But the story here is Arch Manning comes into the game, first play of the game.
Wait, Arch Manning plays General Booty next week?
I
Did
think
you just
so,
say
yeah.
that?
I think
Oh
that's
my.
true. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
First play of the game, first play of his appearance in the game was a 19-yard touchdown. He accounted for 5 total touchdowns. He ran for 67-yard touchdown. He threw 2 more touchdowns of more than 50 yards. He got everybody involved, and we're talking about a guy, and I truly believe this, that looks the part of being the next great college football quarterback. And I know that there was a lot to
Except he backs up a really good one already. I mean, we saw Quinn Ewers in person last week, so this isn't one of those Wally Pipp situations, I don't think.
No, I don't think that he's going to win the job this year, but I do think that whether Quinn can go or not, Texas can go to bed tonight feeling pretty good about what they have there. And if nothing else, the future is in pretty good hands. Like there was this huge discussion point when Arch Manning was a recruit of if his last name were something else, what would he be rated?
Right.
And there were some, and
I didn't see anything from those people
Yeah. Well,
on Saturday.
It was an interesting case study because it is like you could not cook up a fake player in the video game or in real life that would have more hype. Like we're talking about a 6'4", whatever he is, 225-pound specimen of a human with the last name of Manning. Like there's no such thing as more hype in recruiting. It cannot get bigger than this. And during this time, I asked a lot of people in the recruiting analysis part of it, the analysts, what they thought the answer to that question was. And some said he's the bona fide number 1 overall player in the country. And I even got some recruiting analysts who thought that he was the 3-star. And that really did kind of create a lot of discussion point because you didn't really know what we were working with. Were we working with somebody who had a bunch of hype because of his uncles, or are we working with somebody who was a generational talent? And for him to come out after being as anonymous as Manning could possibly be in college football for over a year and look the way that he did in this game, I really do believe that if you're a Texas fan, you could take a deep breath and go, you know what? The people who thought he was the number 1 overall player in the country were probably right.
Well, so Austin in the chat says, depending on the severity of Quinn's strain, Sark might sit him until Red River. Sucks for Quinn's Heisman hopes, but this team can coast with Arch the next 2 weeks. I think this team can win with Arch pretty much any week.
Yeah.
The fact that they have Arch and Quinn when Quinn comes back healthy is an advantage I'm not sure that many of the teams that we're discussing have.
Absolutely. And how many teams would Arch be starting for in college football this year? 100?
Yeah.
More?
Oh, more than that, I think.
So, for somebody who have as much hype as he has to come out and make it look easy, and that touchdown run, you saw, right? That little that athletic stutter step. I know people were joking about how his father was the most athletic of the Manning brothers, which
Cooper,
Cooper was
a
receiver and very athletic. Thinking of a Manning stutter stepping and hesitating and causing some defender in the defensive backfield to fall on his face and then rushing to the end zone for 67 yards, on top of the arm that he has and the poise that he has and the understanding of the game and being in the first family of football. Like, I really do believe that I saw enough tonight just in terms of the look about him in extended action that the people who thought he was a bona fide number 1 overall player or number 2, I know On 3 had Nico number 1, and guess what? That worked out pretty well too.
Yeah.
Are probably going to be right. Like, I think it's really exciting for Texas, and Ewers deserves a lot of credit for bringing them back. He got them back to the playoff. My hope is, and my expectation is, that he will return healthy at some point this year and lead them into the playoff again. But holy crap, I was really impressed with what I saw, and it's exciting.
It is very exciting. And the thing is, we've been waiting for this, and you and I, we joke about every time Arch does anything, we make sure we get his name in a headline, like we make sure we do a video. This time we actually have a reason to do this. Like, he looked phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
I realize, UTSA is not having the best of weeks. They got smoked by Texas State.
Mm-hmm.
Now they get beat here. But this, the run I did not expect.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
I mean, it wasn't just stats. Everybody on Texas roster could probably put up a bunch of stats.
Yeah. But he looked
it's
poised. He looked good.
Do you believe that you can have the look and see the look and feel the look against an overmatched opponent? Like, do you think I'm overselling this?
You might be overselling it. Well, we'll talk about Florida in a bit, but think about DJ Lagway versus Samford and DJ Lagway versus Texas A&M. Two different stories. UTSA is better than Samford, but yeah, you don't necessarily know, but he certainly looked the part.
Yeah.
And he didn't look like the guys he plays with, because the people on the Texas offense, the starting players in the Texas offense, are most of them quite elite. Yeah. And he looked like he fit right in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the physical traits. And I don't think that anybody thinks that he's not going to catch on in a really impressive way from a mental standpoint or an understanding standpoint, given he's probably been indoctrinated by 2 of the best quarterbacks who have ever lived. So, I have really high hopes. I hope we get to see him more this year. And frankly speaking, I still don't think I would drop Texas out of the number 1 spot if Quinn was out for the year. Like, that's how I feel.
Wow. Well, and the thing is, like, they have not given you reason to. So we'll see what happens with Arch. We don't yet know the severity of Quinn's injury, and Sark said he's gonna update that later, and they'll get a better idea.
And he did return to the sideline in street clothes shortly after leaving, and he looked very at ease and was laughing and stuff on the sideline. So it didn't look to me like somebody who expects to have a season taken from him. And the hope is, of course, that he doesn't. But it is, I mean, Texas, I wrote this column at Michigan last week. Let's just talk about Texas for a second. Like when you think about, and this could maybe be a transition to Florida, not to take your job from you, but
we're transitioning to LSU. We got a whole lot of Florida that people can already see. So
you want to talk about what a look of a number one national championship favorite roster looks like?
Yeah.
You know, your Heisman favorite quarterback leaves the game. You have this next number one overall player coming off the bench, but the skill position talent, Andy, Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo and
Isaiah
all these
Bond.
guys, Isaiah Bond, like they have so many options and dudes. And, you know, I believe that Jayden Blue did not play tonight too, and they ran the ball pretty well. So like they are a very, very deep and talented roster. And I am firmly willing to say that Texas is all the way back.
I would agree with you. And this is one of the best teams in the country. Now we will get to see Texas against Georgia. We'll get to see Texas against Oklahoma. So we'll have a chance to really see Texas get tested. But you know who got tested today was LSU. Before we talk about that, because this was as dramatic a television as you were going to see this LSU South Carolina game, but some other very good television involving LSU. The Money Game is a 6-part docuseries on Prime Video that if you're not watching it, it's time to start. I started binging this thing last week. It is fascinating. You've got Jayden Daniels, Angel Reese, Livvy Dunne, all on the same campus. Insider access, like the stuff with Jayden Daniels between the Alabama game and the Florida game is so interesting from last season. The Money Game is on Prime Video. If you want to go straight to the Money Game, if you're already a Prime Video subscriber, click the link in the show description of the YouTube clip you're watching right now. If you're not already a Prime Video subscriber, click the link also, and it'll help you get signed up. You definitely want to see the Money Game, and you definitely were enjoying watching LSU, if you're an LSU fan, come back against South Carolina. Now, you were not enjoying things when they went down 17-0 in the first quarter. Like I posted the Brian Kelly as Ralph Wiggum, I'm in danger clip.
Yeah, I said they were cooked. I literally said LSU is cooked. So second week in a row, I could have ended up on freezing cold takes, but
yeah,
I mean, it was not a very pretty look about it. They had bad penalties.
They're struggling to deal with Lenore Sellers because South Carolina at a certain point just started running the option with Lenore Sellers, and there wasn't much LSU could do about it. Now, Lenore Sellers hurts his ankle right before the half, and then we didn't see him again. You know, he tried to come back in. Robbie Ashford winds up taking over for the rest of the game. South Carolina still had a field goal try to tie it at the end. They missed, but a miraculous comeback from LSU throughout that game. I thought Garrett Nussmeier played great. That dude is a stud. And he was just getting battered early in the game, but he hung in, and that was a lot of fun watching him bring them back.
Yeah, on one hand, if you're an LSU fan, you're probably concerned about what this team is going to look like when it goes into the meat of its SEC schedule. But on the other hand, to have a game where you play so poorly and just about everything can go wrong for an entire half of football, and then you go out on the road and win behind a quarterback that looks like an emerging star. Like, I do think that there are some things that you can take away from this win and feel good about, you know, because there was a minute there I was like, people in Baton Rouge are going to hate Brian Kelly if they lose this game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people, like, sentiment
it was going to get bad. Yeah.
Flipping already after the USC game. Could you imagine had they lost this one? And, you know, they have some games coming up here that they might be able to find some things, UCLA and South Alabama, but then a 4-game stretch there with Ole Miss, Arkansas on the road, which probably won't be an easy win for them, at A&M, a team that might be feeling pretty good about itself by then, and then Bama. Like that they really need to like figure out how to play good disciplined football before they end up playing Ole Miss and get run off the field.
Yeah, it is going to be, I think, an adventure in Baton Rouge this season, because South Carolina, it's hard to say because we see what Kentucky did with Georgia tonight, and you look at what South Carolina did to Kentucky, and you're like, oh, man, maybe they're just really, really good. But watching that South Carolina-Kentucky game, it felt like it was a lot more of Kentucky just poorly executing.
Yeah.
I do think if Lenora Sellers is fully healthy, they're a very dangerous team.
Yeah, I
But-
don't think they stink by any stretch of the imagination.
But
yeah.
we'll see what happens with the ankle and because that's the sort of thing with a guy who is that good of a runner. How long does that affect him? When do they get him back full strength? Because it felt like they'd figured something out there in the first half, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that if he's still banged up.
Yeah, and how about a quick shout out to Robbie Ashford too?
Yeah,
Like he
did a
played
good job
really
keeping him in
well,
there,
and he
yeah.
put them in a position to kick a game-winning field goal. It didn't go in, or a game-tying field goal, I think, at that point, right? But with just seconds left on the clock, he gets them all the way down the field and had some big passes and big runs on that final drive. And to have a backup that you can feel pretty good about, I thought he played really well in his role there.
Yeah, and Rocket Sanders also.
Yeah,
Big day for the former Arkansas Razorbacks. Rocket Sanders had a good day for
yeah.
South Carolina.
He busted that 70-yard touchdown
Yeah.
run when it seemed to be going off the rails.
KJ Jefferson led UCF back. They were down 28-7 at one point at TCU, and they ended up winning the game. So big day for the former Razorbacks. But yes, LSU, I think this is more of a breathe. But then it gets their schedule's hard. And we pointed to this game saying, hey, this is one you can't really overlook. But their schedule just gets harder.
I mean, that was an emotional day for LSU fans. I think that the message boards were popping there in the first half. And to come back and get a win, you can take that deep breath. But, I mean, I think people were thinking some pretty unhealthy thoughts there in the first half of that football game.
Yeah, I mean, they've got UCLA and South Alabama are games they should win. Then they get Ole Miss on October 12th.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one we've pointed to for Ole Miss as the game they need to prove something. And Ole Miss has a nice runway.
They do.
Up to that game. Meanwhile, LSU's got to go Ole Miss at Arkansas, which I'm not writing off as an easy win, at Texas A&M, which is not going to be an easy win, and then Alabama.
Yeah, no, that's not an easy schedule. And, I think that we could be feeling a lot differently about LSU had they won their opener against USC and found a way to win this game. There have been a lot of clunkers in college football this year, Andy.
Yes.
It's easy to brush stuff off as clunkers, but I do leave this game with a sigh of relief, but also too on high warning watch of like LSU. If they play like that in the first half against other teams in the SEC, they're going to get dropped again.
Yeah, this is danger time, but look, they've pulled it out. They figured it out. All right, we're going to talk about our friends at PrizePicks because I am poised for a good day on Sunday. I need Caleb Williams to throw for 1 yard. So we're talking about PrizePicks, the most fun daily fantasy game in America. Use your code Staples, play $5, get $50 instantly, and also get a free square. It's almost free. Caleb Williams, every week in September, the Bears quarterback, if he throws for 1 yard, then you win a square. And how PrizePicks works is you pick squares where you say, I think this person will throw for more than these yards or fewer than these yards, or this WNBA player will score more than this many points or fewer than this many points. And so I had one where I had Missouri receiver Luther Burden, longest reception, more than 28.5 yards, and he had a 44-yard catch in the win against Boston College today. Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, more than 323.5 passing yards. He had more than that in the win against Wake Forest. And so now if Caleb Williams throws for a yard this weekend for the Bears, I'm going to win that one. I had $25 to win $125. And if Caleb Williams throws for a yard, there it is. Did not win them all, Ari. Was not completely lucky today. I thought we'd get to Wisconsin field goals.
Well, it's funny
and they put it in the end zone one time.
You did mention that because I too will win if Caleb Williams throws for more than 1 yard.
Ooh, how about that?
I had Jalen Milroe more than 44.5 yards rushing. I think he blew over that. We were at the game today. Garrett Nussmeier, fewer than 300.5 passing yards. Had to sweat that one out. It looked like a pretty easy winner there for a while, and then he came back firing. Isaiah Bond from Texas, more than 61.5 receiving yards. He blew through that. And Noah
blew through that on one catch.
Noah Fafita, less than 75.5 passing yards. So if
because K-State clobbered Arizona.
K-State did clobber them. And I had another one, Andy, that was 4 and had 3 of the same ones I just read off.
Yep.
And Travis Hunter, more than 100.5 receiving yards.
Uh-huh.
And he finished the day with 100 yards. I missed by a half a yard. But you know what? It's an invigorating game. I had a lot of fun, and I got a winner, I think. I think if Caleb Williams should be able to throw for a yard.
Throw for a yard, Caleb.
It is the Bears. You never know.
That's right. Use the code Staples. Play $5. Get $50 instantly at PrizePicks. All right. Before we get to that other team in the state of Florida that is in shambles right now, let's talk Florida State. Because you asked me a very interesting question after Florida State lost to Memphis today. Would you care to ask that in front of the people here?
Yes, I'm just wondering, and I don't know if I'm the only one who thought this, but Florida State isn't just bad; they're cursed, right? Like there's
Possibly.
something there's a higher power here. It's September. We're getting close to Halloween. There's some weird stuff going on. What was his at Knoll 3 or 3 Knoll have to eat
3-2-1 Knoll.
3-2-1 Knoll have to eat dog poop out of the Red Solo Cup to break this hex. Like, is that what's going to have to? Because like, look at Florida State's schedule. Do you feel good about any of these games?
No.
Coming up. Memphis didn't play particularly well in this game.
No,
They didn't come out like playing like they
weren't moving the ball well. They had a lot of opportunities to score easy points, and I don't think they scored a lot of easy points. This does not get easier for Florida State. Like Cal is not easy. SMU is not easy. Clemson won't be easy. Duke's not easy. Miami is very hard. I'm looking for wins here, and I'm struggling.
I don't see one win.
Charleston Southern.
I don't see. I'm not giving them Charleston
Wow.
Southern. You can give it to them. I am seeing one very sad game at the end of the season too. You going to cover that?
Maybe.
You want to?
Maybe. Let's before we go on to that other team in the state of Florida. Mike Norvell was talking about the loss to Memphis. Well, just watch.
I tell it to teams all the time. Momentum takes one play. I mean, that's it. That's all it takes to change it. And we just obviously have had some opportunities that that we needed to respond in those situations. But I mean, I think from their attitude, their approach. I mean, even they're in the locker room, we're all disappointed. As we continue to work and continue to pour into each other and the opportunity we have.
All right, thank you. Leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway.
That is the fire alarm going off in a moment of extreme symbolism as Mike Norvell tries to explain what the hell they're going to do now.
Some jokes just write themselves, Andy. I don't know. That sounded like a meltdown alarm to me.
It did. And look, don't you have to try something different at quarterback?
What is
try?
the reason we think he isn't? Because
at practice, no one's better than DJU. I mean, that's the legitimate reason. That's why you would make that decision.
Yeah. Okay, I guess it's hard to picture that, but
3-2-1 Knoll. It's time to step up. That's the thing. Like, what if 3-2-1 Knoll does it right before the Notre Dame game or right before the Miami game?
Hammering Florida State.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's got to reverse the hex.
Said he'd post video. I mean, we need video. By the way, in the chat, people trying to get us to note this. We will. Toledo did blow out Mississippi State.
Yes.
Toledo went down to Mississippi State. And in a game that Toledo made $1.7 million on, they got $500,000 to move a game that had been scheduled. I want to say it's Maryland.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade put all this out earlier today. And so they get the $500,000 to move that game to 2029. And then they go to Starkville where Mississippi State pays them $1.2 million. So they made $1.7 million to beat Mississippi State 41-17.
Yeah, 10.5-point dogs go in there, and it was a thorough beatdown. There's a lot of things that I would be curious to look up and probably will. Here are two of them. One, when's the last time that Florida State and Florida began a season cumulatively 1-5? I'd love to know what the stat is on that. And what is the biggest at-home SEC loss to a non-power team?
Vanderbilt's had a few.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So that's a really bad one, though. That's up there. That's one of the worst ones. Now, who plays in Starkville next Saturday?
Who? No, I don't know. I forgot.
That would be the Florida Gators.
Oh, God. Oh, God. No. God, no.
The Florida Gators are headed to Starkville, which other than the last time they were there, they did win. It was one of those third and Grantham situations. Todd Grantham was the former defensive coordinator at Florida. I believe called a 7-man blitz, 9 men blitzed, and they did get to the quarterback before he threw to one of multiple wide open receivers. So Florida did win that game, but Starkville has been a house of horrors for Florida. Steve Spurrier had a loss there on a Thursday night game. I was at the game where Ron Zook got croomed in 2004. The question is, does Billy Napier make it to the Mississippi State game? Because what we saw from Florida against Texas A&M was god-awful. And I wrote the column that basically Billy Napier's time is up. It's essentially a math problem now. Yes, you owe him like $26 million if you fire him. You owe him half of that up front. It is a ton of money. But I think they are to the point now where if you keep him, you lose so much in donations and lost ticket sales that essentially it is more expensive to keep him than to fire him. So when it's a math problem like this, the decision is made for you.
Yeah, we spent all week talking about who should play quarterback, who should start. The decision of who he played at quarterback would tell us all we needed to know about whether or not he was fit for the job. And Andy, the mess there was so much bigger than that. That was overly simplistic. And looking at it now, we're talking about a Florida team that is situated in one of the best high school football states in the country, has a ton of talent, access to that talent, a wonderful program with a storied tradition. They are so far off of where they need to be from top to bottom roster wise. And Billy Napier, I feel almost betrayed by it because he's supposed to get it. He's supposed to know what you need to do and what it's supposed to look like. And he's proven time and time again that he doesn't. And it's just an unfortunate reality because, as you said on the YouTube show, and I encourage you guys to go listen to and read his column. It's not about whether you get it or not. It's whether you can do it or not. And he just can't do it.
So Nick Delatorre from Gators Online, that's on 3's Florida site, reporting late Saturday night that the UF Board of Trustees has scheduled a meeting for the morning. We'll see what happens with that. I got the sense, talking to folks, texting with folks on Saturday night, that the decision is essentially made because of what I just said, because they cannot raise money anymore. They need to be able to get donations. They will need to sell tickets at some point next year. So the decision is there. The question is when and how, and it is very complicated in the case of Florida because the president resigned in July. The interim president is the former president. So Ben Sass was the president. He resigned. Kent Fox, who was the president before Ben Sass, is now the interim president. So he would be one of the people involved in the decision. Scott Strickland's the athletic director. He's the one who hired Billy Napier. He also hired Dan Mullen. He also fired Jim McElwain, hired Dan Mullen, fired Dan Mullen, hired Billy Napier. We don't typically see SEC athletic directors get to hire a third head football coach when you didn't have one leave because they got a better job. So the question is what happens there? And it's not an easy answer because the president of the university is the one who would make any decisions regarding the athletic director and would make any decisions regarding whether the athletic director is still the athletic director, or if he is still the athletic director, is he going to take part in the coaching search? So we don't know how any of that is going to play out right now. And it is a strange situation for Florida. I don't know that keeping Billy Napier any longer helps. I will tell you, I heard over the past few weeks that if he were fired, the most likely candidate to be the interim on that staff is Dan Enos. And I know a lot of people are rolling your eyes if you were an Arkansas fan or a Miami fan. Dan Enos was the offensive coordinator at those two places. It didn't go particularly well. He was also the offensive coordinator at Alabama. He has been the head coach at Central Michigan. He's on the support staff. He's an analyst there. But they don't have anybody else other than Ron Roberts with previous head coaching experience. And I don't think they want any of the coordinators to have more duties than they already have because they're not doing a particularly great job of coordinating as is.
Yeah, no, it's a big mess out there. But I think that it's become abundantly clear that whatever plan Billy Napier had in place, Andy, for this Florida team, either was misguided or is just off the track so far away that you can't get it back on.
Yeah.
So, I think that your column was spot on. I encourage you guys to go read it on On3. And we talked a lot about this in the video too. So if you want more of it, go check that out too.
So Chris Callahan echoing the sentiment of a lot of Florida folks that were in my text tonight. Steve Spurrier out of retirement. Let's make it happen. Yeah, a little head ball coach interim action. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Sell tickets, wouldn't it?
It would. Well, they definitely show up in force for the UCF game, which is the next home game. But I said on the video earlier, listen, the greatest interim coach in the history of college football is just sitting down there in Miami with no job right now.
Yeah.
Ed Orgeron's right there. Like, you tell him, hey, look, we're not hiring you full time. We want the guy who brought cookies back to the USC training table and then was waving the sword around after they beat Stanford, or the guy who took over at LSU after Les Miles got fired. We want that guy, finish this thing out, get us a win that we never expected to get,
And then go back on down to
and
Boca.
then we're gonna throw hundreds of millions of dollars at someone to come in. But I'm joking, sort of, but not really.
I'd want to cover that. I'd want to go see that.
I would like to see that myself.
Yeah. We're talking about a national champion here, too. Let's
did.
not forget.
He won a national championship.
He won a national championship as a head coach.
Yes. But so what I told you before the Coach O thing is what I'm hearing. So we'll find out more as this process goes on, but it is going to be complex and messy. And Ari, before we get, because I know, like, I'll just tell you right now, and I've seen this in the chat, and I know I've read the Florida message boards. Obviously, the fans want Lane Kiffin. I have no idea if Lane Kiffin wants the Florida job. I do know there are people in the power structure and the money folks at Florida who have now flipped on Lane Kiffin, and now they've decided, yes, that would be somebody they would like to have come coach. But here's the thing with Lane Kiffin or Eli Drinkwitz or any of these people that might be candidates for such a job should it open. How does that work if their team makes the playoff?
All of them are firmly in the mix for that right now.
Correct.
All these
And
candidates.
basically everybody, and this is unique now because it's new. This will be something people have to deal with going forward because basically everybody you might want is going to be in the mix for the playoff.
Yeah, and I love that it's also right dab center in the middle of the early signing period. And
Worse than that.
It's a calendar nightmare.
Worse than that, because they've moved the early signing date. Remember, it is now the Wednesday before the championship games, the conference championship games. So the schools that fire their coaches in season and then hire somebody whose season is over are going to have a coach on signing day. And that guy's going to only have like 2 days before signing day. But the school they take said coach from is going to not have a coach on signing day.
I don't even know what problem solve this for me. Like, what do you even do?
I don't know. I don't.
You're smarter than me. Come up with something.
And here's the other problem. I was texting with somebody about this tonight with regard to Florida. Let's say they were to convince someone who's in the playoff to come to Florida, but you couldn't do it till after that person got knocked out of the playoff. And then if that's the case, obviously everybody's going to leave. Like, all the players are going to enter the transfer portal. But by the time that person gets there,
the portal will be closed.
Right. Or they'll have, maybe it won't have closed, but all the people you want will have gone somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think that what is probably going to happen if this is the circumstances is that coaches are going to accept jobs and then see their current situation out and try to do 2 jobs at once.
But
I mean, that's happened already before.
We've seen that with coordinators going to head coaching jobs in the same conference. We've seen that with coaches at schools in different conferences going to school. But if you do it with a school with a coach who's in the same conference,
it's messy.
You are at odds.
You know what that sounds like to me, though, Andy? A nice recipe for dysfunction stew.
Something to cover for us.
Yeah.
Yes. Austin in the chat asks, if not Lane, who's the next best candidate? How about Eli Drinkwitz? How about James Franklin? How about those guys?
I'm not a big James Franklin guy
Okay.
right now. I think that Eli would be a very intriguing candidate because he seems to get it. But again, so did Billy Napier.
Yeah, but Eli's actually winning in the SEC.
He is winning in the SEC at a place that's much harder to win at.
Exactly. And he's a tenacious recruiter.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing is the state of Missouri, in part prodded by Eli Drinkwitz, has helped them have the best, most advantageous NIL laws. The school has helped him, in part, mostly prodded by Eli Drinkwitz. Will Florida let that happen? Florida's notoriously like, we're above this sort of thing. We don't get the laws changed so that we can have the biggest advantage. Like, Florida's got to get a lot less snobby about this stuff if you want anybody to come.
Yeah. I've been very impressed by what Eli has done in terms of the in-state recruiting, and he's made St. Louis an option again, and there's a connection between the two. I don't know. It's the hardest state in the entire country to recruit is Florida, right? I mean, it has to be. So
yes,
I don't know.
Everybody's coming in.
There is a risk, but here's the thing that I'll say, regardless of who we're talking about. And I don't know why James Franklin would be a candidate when his program has just plateaued, and is the same thing.
Well, because
year.
Maybe he's thinking that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I guess people have also called him a fierce recruiter and an amazing recruiter, and I think he's done pretty good. I don't think he's been amazing. So, for Florida, I think they need the right coach that's going to listen. Florida's not looking for 10 wins. Florida's looking for national titles.
Correct.
And I think you should go find somebody you think can deliver that. And James Franklin does not match that in my head. Maybe I'm underselling him.
But
maybe it's just harder.
Eli Drinkwitz.
I think I would be more willing because of what he's done at Missouri and the last 2 years and this year. This is a playoff team we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So anybody who has already proven that they can build a playoff team in the SEC is an improvement from the current situation there.
Well, we will find out more about that. Please stay tuned to On 3. If you're a Florida fan, you're not already subscribed to Gators Online, now is a great time to do that. Nick Del Torre, Zach Alvaverdi, Keith Niebuhr, they got you covered, and they got a lot to work with right now. Let's talk about what happened on Friday night, Ari. We had a lovely night. Somebody asked earlier, whose kitchen are we in? We're in We're in Kristen's kitchen.
Kristen, the Airbnb hostess. This is a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment that's probably 700 square feet.
Yeah, probably about maybe 800.
It's very Wisconsin in here.
We're in Oregon, Wisconsin, which is a suburb. A suburb of Madison. We're only 15 minutes from Camp Randall Stadium, and so that's whose kitchen we're in. And we were
a wonderful backsplash, Andy.
Oh, it is a beautiful backsplash. But we were out on State Street Friday night. We went to State Street Brats. We were thinking about heading back toward the Capitol, maybe hitting the Old Fashioned, maybe hitting the Great Dane. But I'm old and I'm lame, and I'm like, Art, that couch seemed pretty comfortable at the old Airbnb.
Yeah.
We got the games on because there were two fantastic games. There was UNLV Kansas and there was Kansas State Arizona. And so that's where we wound up.
I mean, Andy, you're old and I'm somebody who is just as old basically, but also going through a stage of life where laying down and being left alone is a nice pleasure that I never thought would be a thing.
Yes.
Getting full nights of sleep. So coming back and watching Arizona, Kansas State, which I was maybe looking at the slate on paper.
Yeah.
One of the more exciting matchups of the weekend, as it turns out. And we learned again, Andy, there's no such thing as a boring Saturday slate in the sport.
Nope. Or Friday.
But there were some questions about Avery Johnson and Kansas State. They, had a few clunkers themselves this year.
Yep.
And they were playing against an Arizona team that has one of the best, if not the best receiver in college football. And they just laid the wood on them.
K-State looked great, and we finally saw what we thought we were going to see in terms of Avery Johnson running the ball.
Yeah.
And that's how they salted away the game, and it was impressive to watch because that's what I've been driving that bandwagon all offseason. In the first couple of games, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. But he certainly showed it in the second half of that game. And then the other game, UNLV Kansas.
Yep.
Sluka Doncic.
Luka Doncic. Yeah, that was electric.
Matthew Sluka, the Holy Cross transfer, who is quarterback at UNLV. I mean, he just put them on his shoulder. and carried them to a win.
And they had one of probably the biggest grab ass play of the weekend where he fumbled
my
the ball.
God.
I've never seen an entire defense touch a
Every
loose ball.
Kansas player, I think, touched the ball and UNLV recovered.
UNLV recovered it for a 9-yard gain.
Yes.
Mind you. And they go on and win that game. I guess we've got shows every day this week, Andy. Well, maybe we could talk a little bit more about Kansas during the week.
Yeah.
But that is not going the way that I thought it would either. But
No.
UNLV is in pole position right now for the G5 spot.
And they got a game against Syracuse coming up.
They are playing Syracuse still. We also have Memphis, who beat Florida State, who's
correct.
undefeated. That I don't know if that game is going to hold the weight that we thought it could. When we looked at their schedule, but Memphis is a good football team who has a chance to win their conference.
USF still plays Miami.
Yep.
So, and they look good. They beat Southern Miss on Saturday, but obviously look good against Alabama. We'll talk about Alabama in a second because
then I think Boise State too is still in the mix. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jeffrey in the chat asked, why didn't Big Cat have you over in Madison? We actually did see Big Cat today.
We hung out with Big Cat, and I had 2 high noons with the.
There you go.
With the
He was
host.
hoping we'd stay with him till the game started because somebody had asked him to do a beer bong, and you could see the lady kind of hovering around like, come on, you said you'd do it. And Big Cat's wife was there too, but then I believe his wife then went to go see somebody or something, and so he wound up doing a beer bong. So
he didn't want to do it, but then he took it like a champ.
I apologize to Big Cat for abandoning you in your moment of need, but we had to get back to the press box and cover the game.
Yeah, and the hope is when you come to Dallas in a few weeks for the Oklahoma-Texas game, Big Cat is going to be in town. We hope to see him again. Let me tell you guys this about Big Cat. Dude is just the nicest human being you'll ever meet.
This is one of the hosts of Pardon My Take, which is the biggest sports podcast in the world. Him and PFT commenter, and they're nice enough to have me on every once in a while. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. But Jeffrey, who asked that question, I know you want to know about something else. Can we get to Coach Siggs and the discussion of Indiana's record before Michigan?
Yes.
Indiana won in the Rose Bowl. They didn't win the Rose Bowl. They won in the Rose Bowl, but Indiana looked great against UCLA.
Indiana was favored in the Rose Bowl.
I know
you can say that. You can say Indiana was favored in the Rose Bowl with a straight face and covered in the Rose Bowl. Pull up we got to pull up their schedule. Like, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but like everybody knew that Sig's a winner, man.
Yeah.
He's a winner.
Now they've got a Nebraska game before the stretch. They have Michigan and Ohio State back to back late in the season, but they also play Nebraska earlier than that. So
there we go.
If they can beat Maryland, there's no gimme.
Maryland's pretty good.
Are we potentially in a world where a 6-0 Indiana plays a 6-0 Nebraska?
Game day better be there. We better be there.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a distinct possibility based on what we've seen so far this year. I don't know. Nebraska won again. And Dylan Raiola did his Patrick Mahomes impersonation that everybody was making fun of before the game.
Patrick McCondo's.
He's not even trying to hide it anymore.
Patrick Kristen's Airbnb.
Apartments. Yeah, I wrote that column on Monday about how it's a good idea that he's doing it. I think I've kind of backtracked a little bit.
I've gone around the bend on it.
I think that he should keep doing it. I just think it should be less egregious. Like, I think
less obvious.
Yeah, yes. Like the one that if you go watch the video, like he is legitimately just copying what Mahomes does and doing it.
All right,
but yes, I'm here for Indiana unbeaten matchup with Nebraska.
It's possible. It's possible. All right. Producer River wants to talk Missouri, BC. We should talk about that because BC took a lead. I believe they would go up 14-3 on one of the flukier touchdowns you will ever see. Thomas Castellanos picked up a fumble. The Missouri players were all chasing the fumble. A receiver snuck behind the defense. They scored. But then that was pretty much it because Missouri just laid the wood to him after that. It was one of those deals where Missouri was moving the ball fine. They stalled out a couple of times in the red zone, had to kick field goals. But then once they really got going, I believe it was Luther Burden who broke the touchdown seal. They looked pretty great.
Yeah, and the final score was 27-21, Andy, but BC got a late touchdown there to make the score appear closer than the game was. They got off to a slow start, but Missouri took care of business. And, for a team that I think has the easiest schedule of anybody in the SEC, they're in a position to not only make this playoff, but maybe get a pretty high seed if they can keep winning the way that they've been winning. Yeah.
Let's just run through the SEC ass kickers
while
we're at it. Ole Miss hasn't given up a touchdown yet. they crushed Wake Forest. You and I saw Alabama together against Wisconsin, and they looked pretty spectacular. I had a couple maybe quibbles with the run defense, but I felt like Jalen Milroe looked great. I thought Ryan Williams is as advertised. He's spectacular. And then, defensively, they're really trying to force turnovers. They stripped 4 fumbles. They ended up recovering 2.
I think I'm ready to pick Alabama over Georgia 2 weeks in advance.
Okay. Well, no, they don't play anybody. Neither of them play anybody.
That's what I'm saying.
Now and then,
Where's game week? It's game 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I based on what I've seen, I think that Alabama at home is the play there. So we'll see what the spread is when it comes out. But I think that's going to be obviously a hell of a game, and probably a game that will end up going live on YouTube for after.
I would say so. I would say so. Now you're going to be at Tennessee, Oklahoma next
Cannot
week.
wait.
Oklahoma beat Tulane.
They were in danger of losing that game again.
Yeah, close.
They were Tulane had the ball down 5 in the 4th quarter on the road, and they ended up not coming close to winning at the end, but Oklahoma had another scare. But yes, Tennessee, let's go into that. The over-under on the Tennessee game was 63, and Tennessee covered it by itself in the first half in this game.
Yes, and then called off the dogs and asked if Kent State would take the running clock or the shorter quarter. This was just a brutal beatdown.
But props to Kent State for saying no. You
I know.
take your beating like men, and you move on to the next week, 71-0. Though, listen. The first 2 weeks I've put Tennessee in the top 5 of my top 10 on Saturday night, Andy. People have gotten a little upset about that. Like, how could you put them above Alabama? How could you put them above Ole Miss? Like, people don't know it yet, but Tennessee's legit this year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tennessee's good, and you're about to find – well, look, they're going to Oklahoma.
Yep.
I say you're about to find out, but remember how cavalier I was about how bad Georgia was going to beat Kentucky?
Yeah.
I got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this.
Or you could just keep being yourself and then have a good show, Like, it's
guess,
okay.
but
Yeah.
I was watching that game and I was like, man, I sound like a complete idiot talking about, well,
Listen.
Kentucky even show up. Well, they show a pulse.
Andy,
They should have won the game.
Andy, we're not Miss Cleo, okay? If you and I could tell the future and knew exactly what was going to happen before it happened, I would be probably living in a huge mansion in Seaside next year right now, right?
That's true.
Or maybe you out in Laguna Beach with me.
Exactly.
But that's not what we're paid to do. We're paid to analyze the game, and if anybody told you that they saw whatever happened over there in the Kentucky Georgia game coming, then you've got a liar. So
Yeah,
we're
I
not
don't
supposed
think
to see
anybody
that
in Kentucky
coming.
saw that
Yeah.
coming either.
I don't think Mark Stoops saw that coming, but he saw it going when he punted for no reason at the end of the game.
Well, remember in our Sauciest Takes segment on Wednesday's show when I said, "Is Oregon good?" Question mark.
Yeah, is Oregon good? I mean, yeah, I think they're pretty
I
good.
think they're pretty good.
It's crazy how good players translate to being good. It's just like,
Well,
it's
it took them a minute, but
it took a minute. Yeah,
they did break free in the Civil War, pounded on Oregon State. Meanwhile, Washington State wins the Apple Cup.
they do. Yeah, Washington bolts to the Big Ten, but Washington State there's been a lot of that. Team leaves conference, team loses or is shown up by teams left behind.
Well, Oregon State didn't show up Oregon, but
Yeah, that's
Washington
true.
State sure as hell showed up Washington. That was a big one. The Jed Fish to Florida train probably derailing there although he's got a $12 million buyout. So I don't think that was really an issue anyway.
Yeah,
But it is his alma mater. So this was a fun one because it's just you knew that either Oregon State or Washington State, one of them was going to do it because they just wanted to stick it up there. You know what? I realize we've already gone explicit on this show, but
yeah. No, I'm gonna hold it back. But Andy, there's one game that I wanted to make sure I mentioned because it's going to be a bit for me.
Notre Dame and Purdue.
We didn't mention Notre Dame. And
Well, let's
Purdue.
talk Notre Dame. By the way, welcome back Notre Dame to the world of being competitive.
66-7 against Purdue. Holy,
Where were you last week?
66
Where was
points.
it? Like, could you have not done half of this last week and half of this week, and we wouldn't have gotten put on freezing cold takes?
Yeah. So in the second quarter of this game, there was a defensive end pick six.
Yeah.
To make it 35-0. And that was the first touchdown catch, apparently, that anybody on Notre Dame's team had this year. And it was a defensive end. So you do what you want with that stat, but I was laughing at that. Here's the thing, and here's the bit. This is a new era. We tend to forget about teams, and I'm going to put Notre Dame on my bubble watch already.
You should. Yeah.
this team is very much alive for the playoffs still. And even though they betrayed us and put us on freezing cold takes, it is absolutely 1,000% within the realm of possibility that they run the table and make the playoff this year.
Yes.
And I just I don't want to forget about them. And look, they're playing Miami, Ohio. Louisville's going to be a tough game. Stanford. I mean, I guess every game they could lose if you lose to NIU, but this is a very manageable schedule. And I think it's possible that like the final game of the year at USC is for a playoff spot.
Wow.
Like, I mean, that's the world we're in right now, right? Like, we can acknowledge that that's like a real possibility. I'm not like nuts, am I?
No, you're not nuts.
Yeah.
Nope.
So every single week when Notre Dame wins, I am going to mention on this show that they won, and I'm going to remind you that they are alive in the playoff because we're not going to forget about Notre Dame this year. That's my shtick this year.
The plucky underdogs from South Bend that nobody ever talks about. I'm glad you're going to give them some shine, Ari. I appreciate it.
I just want them to. I just like, you guys are all the ones who love this expanded playoff. I'm going to lean into it.
So, a couple players I want to mention just because we talked a lot about the Florida situation. Texas A&M started a backup quarterback, and he played amazing. Marcel Reed was awesome in that game. So, congratulations to the Aggies, and also congratulations to Marcel Reed, who now Connor Wigman was injured, couldn't go. The question is Marcel Reed the guy going forward?
I think that we're going to be talking about it. Yes.
I
don't know if it's going to happen, but we will be discussing it because it's going to be a talking point.
Yeah. And one more, Kobe Hudson, the UCF wide receiver, game-winning touchdown catch while getting targeted. He caught the ball, got targeted, still held onto the ball. UCF wins it 35-34 after trailing 28-7 at one point.
And yeah, Florida's on watch in that game again.
Hey, they got the mighty Mississippi State Bulldog. Florida and Mississippi State, let them sort their differences out first. One of them's at least going to win that game. They both need it really bad.
Andy, I know that we're like getting towards the end here, and it's past midnight Eastern time, but I refuse to let us get through this pod without mentioning the ass targeting that we saw today.
We did see ass targeting in the Florida Texas A&M game.
A person got removed from a football game for targeting someone's ass cheek. That happened in the sport.
That is an accurate description of what happened. Now, I get it. The rules in place to protect the defensive player. They're not supposed to hit their head. They could potentially break their neck if you tackle with your head down. I get it. Maybe you don't need to throw that flag.
Yeah, I don't think that was the intention. And
his helmet hit the booty cheek.
It was literally crown to ass cheek.
Michael in the chat, how did Colorado perform today? I was working and haven't seen the highlights. I know they won. They did win. They performed very well against Colorado State, which is not very good.
Yeah, they I thought it was going to be a close game, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
so
28-9. Colorado wins. Oh, also the backyard brawl. Pitt comes back and wins the backyard brawl. Then Pat Narduzzi says, we beat West Virginia and we beat the refs. And Neil Brown, the West Virginia coach, gets asked about that, and his very succinct response, that's bullshit.
Pitt was losing to West Virginia by 10 with 4 minutes and 55 seconds left.
Yep.
And there was a circus touchdown catch to put West Virginia up by 10, and Pitt came back and won the game.
Yes.
And it was a truly exciting game. And it was kind of off in the background a little bit with a lot of the stuff that was happening in the same time window. But it was maybe the most thrilling comeback and interesting finish of the day.
Which is crazy because that UCF one was wild as well.
Yes.
And again, nobody was watching that because Georgia was almost losing to Kentucky.
Yes. Yeah. It was I do feel like this day, is this crazier than last weekend?
Yes.
Because last weekend we were overwhelmed in our show preparation. And I feel like, first of all, Utah barely got by Utah State today. They won by 17, but that game was a lot closer. And I just have it in the back of my head that like we're forgetting something, even though we talked about everything. Like it was that kind of day.
It was. And so this is what we're going to do, Ari. We're going to look at the schedule next week and we're going to go, this doesn't look as lively as last week. We're not going to say that, though, because that's going to be wrong.
I literally did say that to you as we were walking into Camp Randall, and it's just like, I got to just learn my own lesson. There's no such thing as a bad slate of college football games. Grab ass is always around the corner, and, buddy, it was prevalent on Saturday.
It sure as hell was. We'll see you on the On3 Sports YouTube page on Sunday night. We may be talking to your team. We have a message for your team. And then on Monday, we'll be back 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on the On3 Sports YouTube page. We're picking the games of week 4, which, as Ari just explained, is going to be as amazing as this one was, because grab ass is always around the corner. Talk to you.